All right, we'll get started at 7 o'clock. Welcome, everyone. This is another of our wonderful evenings with Dave Chapman as our tour guide of the moon. Jerry Black and Blair McDonald will be our two cameramen, so to speak, for the evening. We're hoping that the clouds stay away. We know that it is socked in various parts of the province right now. So hopefully out here in Lower Sackville, we will retain some sense of viewing. Dave Chapman is our observing chair and our well-respected local lunatic. So I will hand it over to Dave to take it on from here.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. For those that are tuning in, we're sort of on the edge of being able to show you the moon tonight. 20 minutes ago, it seemed like it was socked in. I think even at the moment, I think we're actually looking through a thin veil of clouds. So we're hoping that it's going to clear up a bit, but we decided to go ahead because we can see enough of the moon that we can identify things, and so people may find it interesting anyhow. So for those that are coming in from a long ways away, this is the RASC Halifax Center, and we just heard from Judy, our president. I'm the observing chair, as she said, and co-author of the RASC Explore the Moon program. We're not going to follow any particular program here. We're just going to tour around, but there is sort of a beginner program for people starting to explore the moon. There's two moon programs in the RSC. One of them is Explore the Moon, and it's designed for beginners with small telescopes, and it has about 100 objects to view in a telescope, and it's highly recommended. Even if you're not really adept at using your telescope, we feel that Explore the Moon actually is a good way to learn how to use your telescope. So you don't have to be an advanced telescope user. I mean, you can actually use this program to learn how to use your telescope. The idea being that the moon is easy to find, it's very bright, the details you're looking for are there's a lot of contrasts, there's very little uncertainty about whether you found the thing you're looking for and so on. It's well documented, there's lots of maps and charts. So I'm working from a map, it's an electronic map called the Moon Atlas. It's an app you can buy, it doesn't cost very much. I use it on my phone and I use it on my computer, and that's what we use to navigate around. Jerry, did you want to say something about your setup there? What you're doing?
All right, so this is a 10-inch Meade Schmidt Cassegrain telescope with a ZWO ASI 224 color camera on it that unfortunately for me does not run at USB 3 speeds, and that may be because it's running on a Raspberry Pi rather than a PC. This interface we're seeing here now this is a 2500 millimeter focal length Schmidt Cassegrain, and we're running on prime focus on it at USB 2 speed. So this is the preview at about 4 frames per second, and it might only be doing 640 by 480 resolution. The camera's capable of more, but I've been fighting with it a bit, trying to get it to do what I would like, not necessarily successfully. So anyway, there have been clouds, certainly. It's not too bad at the moment. It's probably partly cloudy right now there. And if we get too far out of focus, I'll have to run out and try and adjust the focus. But it's probably as close to good as this setup can be. Blair, I haven't seen his, but apparently he does have a pretty good image running with his system at the moment. So that would help. All right.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. So I mentioned...
just before I get going, Dave, Eric Briggs is really excited that you have Raspberry Pi, Jerry.
Excellent. I have a number of Raspberry Pis here.
Yeah, I've got 3 or 4 of them. This is the Raspberry Pi 4 that I've been using with the HQ camera for live streaming to YouTube of the moon and some of the planets.
Excellent.
Right.
Yeah, this is a Raspberry 4 8 gig on top of the SCT outside.
One of my colleagues commented that it looked like the back was missing off the camera. And I said, yes, it's back illuminated.
Was that a joke?
That's a CCD joke. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Sorry. All right. Maybe we could just move a tiny bit farther north there, Jerry, so that that crater that's half in the frame can be seen completely. There, perfect. Okay, so I mentioned about the Explore the Universe program, and I've got this nice little workbook here, which isn't generally available, but you can get all the documentation for Explore the Moon online at the RASC webpage. If you go to the Explore the Moon program, you can download all of the information about the program, and it's got all kinds of nice charts and feature maps here of all the things. For both standard view and mirror reversed view. Now you don't have to be a member to download any of that stuff. It's free to you. But you do have to be a member if you want to complete the program and get your certificate and pin. But you can go and grab those things anytime if you want. So we'll start at what we're doing here. It's the first quarter moon. And we're starting near the top of the moon, near the north part of the moon. And we're at a place on the moon where you see the left-hand side of the screen there is black and the right-hand side is illuminated. So that very rough line running north-south is what we call the Terminator of the moon. And what that is, that changes constantly. And from one night to the next, it'll be in a different position, but it'll even change over a matter of hours. And that is where, in fact, at this particular phase, that is where, if you were standing on the moon, that is where the sun is rising on the moon. So if you were standing on the Terminator, the sun would be rising over towards the east, which is to the right. And if you were to the left of that position, if you were to the west of that position, you'd be in total darkness. So this is where the sun is rising on the moon. And if you think about it, it takes the moon about 30 days to go around the Earth. And so sunrise on the moon is 30 times slower than it is on Earth. So we get, we have a whole cycle in a day. On the moon, it's more like 30 days. So it's a very slow process. Anyway, let's identify some of the craters. Over to the upper right, there's a couple of craters, prominent craters, and they're in the program. And the bigger one of the two, where the cursor is, or that's my cursor, you probably can't see that. No, that's Jerry's cursor.
Yeah, that's my cursor.
That's your cursor. It's funny, it looks just like mine, Anyway, that's called Aristoteles, or that's the Latin form of Aristotle. Craters on the moon are typically named for dead scientists. There's some exceptions to that rule, but typically, and Aristoteles, a lot of these were named hundreds of years ago. So Aristotle was recognized as a pioneer of science. The crater beneath that, which is like a smaller version of Aristoteles, is called Eudoxus. And so what you're seeing there is you're seeing the crater rim illuminated by the light, and to the right part of the crater, you'll see this dark shadow, and on the left of the crater, you see it's all bright. So what you have to imagine is the crater has this rim which is sticking up above the lunar surface, and so it's on the right, which is the east, it's in shadow. The crater floor is in shadow, and on the west or left side, the light is striking that pretty much face on, and it's quite bright. So this is the kind of relief you see when you look at the moon. This is why we look near the Terminator, because the angle of the sun casts everything in sharp relief. If we move towards the east from here, things would be a bit more washed out. But there's lots to see right here, and we'll work our way down through the Terminator, along the Terminator. Now over to
Dave,
yes.
just a factoid. Aristoteles is 87 kilometers across and it's 3.3 kilometers deep.
Wow.
So it's not a shallow crater.
Yeah, so you may find maybe the crater floor, it might be below the what's around it, the ground around it. Yeah.
Yeah, whereas Eudoxus, it's about the same depth, but it's only 67 kilometers wide. So it's about 20 kilometers less across, but the same depth.
Okay. So one thing you can see is things are shifting around a bit from picture to picture here, and what that is, that's not due to Jerry or any of his gear. That's actually the effect of atmospheric seeing. The atmosphere is turbulent, and so it refracts and moves the image around from frame to frame. And that's what astronomers call seeing. The seeing is not good tonight.
Jerry, can you enlarge the picture that we're seeing slightly on your screen? Is that possible?
Enlarge it slightly, but it just might be more pixelated.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Now, just stop there. Where Jerry, so over there, okay, you leave the cursor where it is. It looks like we're getting clouds coming and going as well. It's not as clear as we hoped, but so in the vicinity of where Jerry has the cursor now, that's actually the Alps Mountains, the edge of the Alps Mountains. So you can see it's quite mountainous there, not too many craters amongst there. And just north of where Jerry's arrow is, there's this kind of linear feature that's running east-west. And in fact, that's the Alpine Valley there. And that is one of the features in Explore the Moon. If you look at this in your telescope on a nice night, I assure you that it would look a lot clearer than it is right now. And I repeat that that's not because of Jerry's gear. I think it's just the transparency and seeing are fighting us here. So I'm trying to find my place in the program here to see what's what. So Aristoteles and Eudoxus, which we've already seen, are in the Explore the Moon program. And so is the Alps Mountains and the Alpine Valley. Let's see what else we can show them. There's a crater near the Terminator, about halfway down the frame. Maybe, yeah, there you go. That crater is Cassini. And it's very interesting because it's got a central peak in it, but it also has a secondary crater inside, which is not showing up all that well at the moment. Right. Maybe we can move down the Terminator, move south a bit there, Jerry, and we can look at some other stuff. So that would be a good place to stop. I guess there's a bit of delay, yeah? You could go back up a notch. So you'll see here in the picture that there's this, in the lower right-hand corner, there's this very wide area with not much detail on it. There doesn't seem to be any craters, except really tiny ones that aren't showing up. And so there's no large craters, and there's no mountains. And what this is here, it's what they originally called a sea, an ocean sea, or mare in Latin, because they thought these dark areas on the moon were actually literally oceans of water. Well, it turned out that they weren't. But what they are, if you like, are oceans of frozen lava. And so during the time when the moon is being bombarded by all kinds of asteroids and different things, there were some pretty big impacts. And in its earlier life, the moon was molten inside. It's not molten anymore, it's frozen solid. And at the time there was still molten lava, there would be an impact, and what would happen is this lava would seep up from below and flood the surface of the moon. And this is what the mare are. They're oceans of frozen lava basalt. And that there is the Sea of Serenity, Mare Serenitatis. It's the northwest corner. And just above that, in those mountains, which I should know the name of, but I'm not sure what they are exactly right now. So the mountains on the edge of the mare, and that crater, which just looks like a big black hole, is Calipus, I believe. And you can see there's a bit of a breach in those mountains where the lava flowed through. So there's a couple of craters right on the Terminator there that you can only see half of them. And the reason you're seeing them there is because, you know, the crater walls are high and they're catching the sunlight. So, you know, down in the interior of the crater, you can't see the sun, but the sunlight's catching the walls of the craters, and that's why we're seeing those. And I believe that's Aristotle and Autolycus, and those are targets in Explore the Moon. Maybe we can move a bit farther south than from here. Actually, belay that. Let's go a bit from here. Let's go across the Mare Serenitatis and see if we can see a couple of craters on the eastern side, which is to the right. Troy's saying something about a landing site. Apollo 15, yeah. Not sure, I don't have that marked on here, but I believe you. Okay, stop there. So if we could zoom out, which we can't, but if we could zoom out, you would see that the Mare Serenitatis is like a really big oval patch. It's like, you know, it's a really big crater that got flooded. And that means that the thing that made that crater was awfully big. And these events took place quite early on in the formation of the solar system, and there was a lot of big stuff floating around. Thank goodness all that stuff's gone. So there's a fairly big crater there at the eastern edge of the Mare, and that is Posidonius. I'm trying to look these up as I identify them. I believe, yes, that is another target in Explore the Moon. It's an interesting crater because it is a flooded crater itself, but it has rifts and cracks in the floor. We're not seeing those tonight, but
And that's 95 kilometers across, and it's a little bit shallower than the other ones. It's only about 2.3 kilometers deep, although the rim is fairly shallow.
so as you move away from the center of the moon to the east or west or even north and south, you will see that the craters take on an oval shape, and that is most craters are more or less round. But as you move away from the center line of the moon is a sphere. It's a three-dimensional sphere. So when you move away from the center, you know, the surface is kind of angling away from you. So what happens is the craters get foreshortened in the direction of the limb. And so that's why you start seeing the craters looking oval shaped. There are probably some craters that are oval shaped, but by and large, all the craters are round. And it doesn't really matter what direction the impact comes from, as you, unless it's really, really glancing blow, whatever the object is comes in, releases a whole bunch of energy, and there's this basically a big kind of explosion which creates a round crater. So maybe we can go back towards the Terminator, Jerry, at your pleasure. Well, by the way, if you have this idea that you're going to do explore the moon by this, it doesn't work that way. You have to see them with your own eyes through your telescope. I'm sorry. I mean, you can, this is a fun introduction, and you can make notes on them if you like, but it doesn't count. Okay, so there's some more mountains there.
But this is my own telescope.
Yeah, but you're looking at let's not go there, Jerry. Let's not get into that whole debate about electronic imaging. The Explore the Moon is a visual observing program. You have to see the photons with your own eyeballs.
But he's looking at his screen and seeing the photons with his eyes.
Oh yeah, another apologist. He's seeing photons from his screen, not from the moon. Okay, welcome, Blair. Have you got your gear set up?
I do, but the cloud here is not cooperating. I have a wider field view than Jerry does, but it is coming and going. So
well, let's see how it transpires.
Yeah, if it clears up, I'll let you know.
So I think it was Troy said something about Apollo 15, and Apollo 15 didn't exactly land it was one of the later ones, eh? Was it the second last one or third last one? It actually landed in this big jumble of stuff that is to the west of the Mare. I guess they were getting more confident at being able to land in rough terrain. So around here, there's Hadley Mountain, Mons Hadley. For some reason on my map, the mountain range names aren't showing up, which is kind of annoying. If anybody has a map that indicates that, I would appreciate hearing from them.
Zoom in a bit more on your atlas, and you'll see the mountain names.
I'm zoomed in as much as I can. I'll zoom out. No. Anyway. There's a little solitary crater out there, and I'm trying to identify it. Anyhow, maybe we can move a little bit farther south, Jerry, along the edge of that. Oh, I know what that is. Yeah, okay. Good. That crater there is Bessel. And so you can see that by and large, the seas on the moon have not many craters or very little, very tiny craters. So they look fairly solitary. And what this means is that these craters came along after the Mare were created. So you have to imagine you have this moon that's covered with all kinds of craters and different sizes, and the lunar basins are the Mare are like the biggest ones, but they flooded, covering up whatever else was there before, and anything that happened after. So there hasn't been a lot of bombardment since that time, but every so often you come across a crater like Bessel sitting there out in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of really tiny ones too, which tells you that the bombardments that did come after were smaller objects. So the big objects did all of their damage quite early on in the history of the moon, and then gradually they got worked out of the solar system by gravitational interactions, which we should be thankful for, because otherwise we'd be getting clobbered right now. But there were some craters made after that time. I'm not aware of any craters of any consequence that have been observed to be created since people have been looking at the moon. I think things have been pretty static there for the few hundred years we've been looking at the moon, but you never can tell. Hey, it might happen.
That's the Alps Mountains there on that southern shore.
The Alps Mountains, yes, we're getting there.
And the little crater that's sort of that one, that is Sulpicius Gallus.
Oh my goodness.
And the one that's on the lower part of that triangle with Bessel, that one is Menelaus.
Menelaus.
Okay.
I took Latin in high school. Menelaus. Yes, that's correct. That's what I see on my map.
And so then the big one that's to the left of Menelaus, the one that Jerry's got the pointer at now, is Menelaus?
Yeah, Menelaus. Or maybe Menelaus.
Yeah, one of those.
Too bad we don't have any Romans around. Yeah, and on the other side of that, there's a little mare called Mare Vaporum, the Sea of Vapors. One thing that is interesting when you see these mare at low sun angles is you can see these undulations. The basalt, the lava plains are not absolutely flat. They've got these little waves in them, and it's a little bit hard to pick out there, but you can see that there's a little bit of shadowing there, and that's just showing those are called dorsa or something. Ridges, yeah.
Well, it depends what they are, but they could be rims.
Rimae are more like valleys. Dorsa are more like humps, like they're the opposite. They're little wrinkles. Rima are actually like little cracks.
Ah.
I don't think anything that goes by the name of Rima is showing up in this view because of the poor seeing. Here's me. I'm actually trying to move that view down, but it's Jerry that's in charge. If we can move down south, go farther south. Sorry?
Rima Suspicious Gallus is right there.
Yes. Sulpicius Gallus. So we're going to move a bit farther south, and see what else we can see. I haven't been looking at chat. Has anybody been asking questions?
Not yet, but we probably should welcome Pam Weber, who we haven't had on before. And she commented that they're a young homeschooling family turning in. So welcome.
From this region or from somewhere else away?
Good question. We'll have to let Pam type in an answer or open her mic and answer.
Where are you from, Pam? You're allowed to speak if Judy will let you.
Oh, yeah.
We're from Dartmouth.
Okay, great. What part of Dartmouth? I'm in Dartmouth too.
We're from Cole Harbour.
Okay. Cole Harbour.
Yes. And it's Space Week here at our home.
It is.
Lovely.
Yes, it is.
So have you got some young people tuning in?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Do they have any questions? Anything?
questions?
Ask us anything.
Did you know that every time the week changes, we change our classmate? Next week it will be animals.
Well,
Well, that's
yes.
pretty interesting. So I guess we have to try to tell you all we can about space this week. Did you have a question about the moon?
I don't think she does.
Okay. Well, if you think of one.
I know.
What?
Okay.
How many spacecrafts have visited the moon?
Oh, geez. I'd have to go away and answer that. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Really good one.
That's a good question though, because there's a lot of, I think we can pretty much count up the number that have had people on them. Because those were all the Apollo ones. Nobody else landed people on the moon. Now there were 17 Apollo missions, but they didn't all go to the moon. So maybe that's a homework assignment for somebody. Maybe Troy can look that up. How many trips were there to the moon? How many people? But there were a lot of robot spacecraft that went to the moon, uncrewed spacecraft that landed and just took pictures and stuff, and probably are still there.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a good question though. Troy is saying that 6 spacecraft landed on the moon. I can't see the full thing there. Apollo 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17. There's a whole story about Apollo 13. On the way to the moon, they had some equipment failure, and they had to come back, not without landing. And they even made a movie about it with Tom Hanks, I guess. And little known fact, there were Canadian engineers that worked for NASA that helped sort out the problems that prevented that mission from becoming a disaster. So that's a very interesting story to look up. But there were 6. Was there a Chinese lander that brought back stuff or came back from the moon without people in it? Anyone know? Or am I just imagining that?
There's a Chinese rover at the moment on the dark side.
On the dark, that's right, on the dark side of the moon.
Actually, I should correct myself and say on the far side.
On the far side of the moon, yes. Yeah, now, yeah, that was a couple of years ago, eh?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's still there.
And to communicate, they communicate via a satellite in orbit around the moon, which is like relays the data.
That is correct.
Yeah. So where are we? We are now. Where's Waldo? Gosh, I didn't see how we got there.
Agrippa, right there, I think.
Agrippa.
And Godin.
I'm trying to find it now.
And Julius Caesar here.
Oh, there we are. Yeah, Agrippa. Julius Caesar is another. That one there. Julius Caesar is another flooded crater. You see how it's on the edge of the mare, and it is partially flooded. Agrippa and Godin. As we get down to the southern part of the moon, there's going to be a lot of craters and not many mare.
And the crater that's sort of at maybe 10 o'clock to Julius Caesar up there is Boscovich.
Boscovich. Which one's Julius Caesar again?
Right there where Jerry's cursor is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, up there.
Yep.
So, yeah, okay, Boscovich. Yeah, I'm zoomed in. I'm zoomed in at a different scale on my map. I gotta try to match what Jerry's looking at there.
For those of you with a Ruckel atlas at your disposal, we're looking at basically map 34 in Ruckel.
Okay, so we're getting to quite a busy part of the moon. Let's go down a little more farther south there, Jerry. There's a crater at the lower left that I'd like to look at. Bring that up about midships. So that's a pretty big one there. That's Hipparchus. And Judy's going to look up and tell you how big that is.
I will. Just give me a half a second.
And somebody, in fact, just asked that question. How big are these craters? I guess we have been telling you the size of some of them.
Hipparchus is 150 kilometers wide and only 3.3 kilometers, so it's pretty consistent in depth so far.
Yeah. So 100 and how many?
150 kilometers across.
That's a pretty decent size crater. I mean, that's bigger than any city I know of. That would stretch from here to Truro and beyond, right? 150.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the size we're looking at. Horrocks is the one, the inside. How big is that little round crater inside?
Just a second here. See if I get back to you. See if it gives us that. All right, I'll have to look that up separately. Just give me half a second and I'll get that for you.
In your famous book?
No, actually, I'm doing this online. Horrocks is 30 kilometers across and only 3 kilometers deep.
So 30 kilometers across would take in like a good chunk. That would like encompass Halifax regional municipality, more or less, the urban parts of it.
Yeah,
So
in fact, it's we've measured the distance from Lower Sackville to downtown Halifax, and that's 24. So it's larger than that distance.
okay. So, but if you looked at like Halifax, Bedford, Dartmouth.
Yep.
It would be roughly that size. So that's, I mean, HRM goes up and down the coast, but that's another story.
Yes.
And if we go down below, there's another big crater, which I'm going to say is deeper than Hipparchus. Albategnius is there.
I knew you were going to go for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Albategnius. It is 129 kilometers across, and it's 4.4 kilometers deep.
It's deeper than Hipparchus.
A kilometer deeper.
Yeah, so you see there, well, it's a little bit farther west, but it's, and yeah, I don't know how they measure the depth of craters and the height of the walls, but you can see that the floor of that crater is almost entirely in shadow. And there's a little spot there that Jerry's going to point out. That is the central peak of that crater. And that's what you get when you often get a central peak when you have an impact. The stuff goes up and then you end up with a central peak. Now, I'm going to ask Jerry to go cross country and go east. Go east, young man. Because there's an interesting trio of craters that's not on the Terminator that I want to show you. And go a little bit south while you're at it. I'm getting a really weird effect right now. Sometimes when I look at the screen, it looks like that's good. No, that I want that trio in the center. Anyway, go back. You've gone too far. Sometimes when I look at the screen, it looks like the craters are coming out at me rather than going in. Is anyone else seeing that?
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a weird effect. Your brain plays tricks on you. Sometimes it looks like they're depressions, and sometimes they look like they're, yeah. Anyway, there's a nice trio of craters there, which are very prominent. Probably better viewed a day or two earlier in the cycle. The top one is Theophilius. The middle one is Cyrillus, and the one at the bottom is Katerina. And in that order, the interesting thing about these craters is that they're of different ages, and Katerina is the oldest one, and it's the most run down one of the craters. It's hard to see with the seeing, but that's quite a prominent trio. That was when I was a kid and I first started looking at the moon in my little telescope. I picked that trio up quite quickly, and they're right next to Mare Nectaris. That plain to the east and south is called Mare Nectaris. And there's the seeing is coming and going. Sometimes you can see a little crater down there. That's Rosse, R-O-S-S-E.
Yeah, and Katerina is 100 kilometers across.
Yeah.
And 3.1 kilometers deep.
Right.
Compare that to Theophilus.
Okay, go south, Jerry, please.
And Theophilus is the same size and depth.
Yeah. Okay, there's a crater there. Now, I see a question coming in from Ilias Hurley. Are there rules for naming the features of the moon, planets, like there are rules? Yes, there are rules. Ultimately, the International Astronomical Union of all the countries that do astronomy, they're the international body that, amongst other things, names bodies in the universe, solar system, and the features on the moon and other planets. And I don't know the rules off the top of my head, but they're published somewhere. And the rule for, typically the rule for the moon is that they're given the names of deceased scientists. But I think there may be newer craters, which necessarily would be either smaller craters or ones that are on the far side that we've only known about for a few decades. They might have other rules for naming those. Like I know for a fact that there's 3 craters named after the Apollo 11 astronauts. So they weren't scientists, but they made a new rule that you can name them. Anyway, they decide, and they can break the rules because they make the rules. So over at the right part of the screen there, there's a fairly large crater called Fractosaurus. And it's one of these craters that's on, you see these quite a bit on the edge of Mare, where one side of the rim is very prominent, and then the other side it's kind of half buried in the basalt. So you imagine that when the basin was formed, not only did it make a big hole, but towards the edge of the hole, things are sloped. So you'll see that the walls of some craters are very prominent outside of the Mare, and then going into the Mare, you can only see the tips of the crater walls, and they just look like little mountains. But that's a partially flooded crater as well. It has the same floor material as the Mare.
And according to this site, it's 124 kilometers across. The depth is none.
Yeah, well, it's essentially flooded. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Now, there's an interesting feature. You don't have to move the frame, but maybe your cursor, Jerry. There's a scarp that runs across, up and down more or less, over to the left, there's a brightly lit scarp. Farther there, that guy. So that's like a cliff, okay? And it's quite long, and it ends up at a crater called Piccolomini. Piccolomini is that round crater at the bottom with the central peak, and that's called the Altai Scarp, and it's quite a long feature. So the ground to the west of that would be higher than the ground to the east of it, and so that scarp face is catching, it's sloped and it's catching the light at a different angle and it's showing up. If you looked at that Altai Scarp when the moon is waning, when the light's coming from the other side, that would actually show up as more of a shadow. Not many people observe the moon in those phases, but if you do, if you're a real lunatic and you observe the moon and its last quarter and waning phases, which you would do pretty much in the mornings rather than in the evening, you would see a much different view along that scarp. But it is, again, one of the features that are in Explore the Moon.
Yeah. Piccolomini, the crater at the end that you pointed out, Dave, is 88 kilometers across and 4.5 kilometers deep.
So they're all, the variation of the depth is not that great. I mean, they're like 3, 4, those kind of depths. Yeah. Now, if we go to the west, Jerry, towards the Terminator, we can check and see what's going on.
And just to give them a sense of size too, I've just found out the Rupus Altai is 427 kilometers long. So it's quite a long ridge.
Yeah. Eric Briggs is pointing out that, I'm going to paraphrase what he said, but when people were first mapping the moon, people made their own maps and named things whatever they liked, and then there was, like anything else, there's different schools of thought. But when the International Astronomical Union came along, they codified all of that. And now, if you have any new features to name, you have to go through them. You're not allowed. The only unambiguous naming convention is if you discover a comet. Once it's attributed to you that you discovered it, it gets named after you. So if I discovered a comet, it would be Comet Chapman. And if another person, or maybe up to 3 people independently discovered, you would put up to 3 names. So if Judy discovered the comet and reported it, and Lisa Ann's there, I think she's still there. Lisa Ann Fanning. Let's say she discovered the comet, it would be like Chapman Black Fanning would be the name of the comet. It's the only time you can really get something named after you when you're still alive, unless it's an asteroid. But if you discover the comet, you get, it's your name. So.
Yeah, and Troy says that NASA said they will be announcing an exciting new lunar discovery on Monday. And he says, anyone have any guesses?
A discovery?
Discovery.
I haven't got a clue. Anyone else out there? There's nothing much new on the moon. So you think we would have heard about it, but maybe they're telling us about it.
Unless they've discovered ice and water.
Didn't they already?
Thought they did. But...
Now, if they discovered a McDonald's or something like that, that might be interesting. Anyway, I shouted out there. I mentioned Lisa Ann Fanning, and I'm singling her out for attention because, first of all, she's one of our foreign members, I guess, non-Nova Scotia members. She lives in New Jersey, and she originally joined the RASC as kind of, I don't know what they call them now, national member or whatever. Anyhow, somehow, and it wasn't very hard, but somehow I persuaded her to, you should just join the Halifax Center because that's where all the cool people are. And she did. And so she's now a member of the Halifax Center. And just the other day, she handed in her observations, and we were awarded, the RASC nationally awarded her the Explore the Universe certificate and pin, which should be on its way. So anyway, that's why I singled her out. I saw her name on the list, and I'm glad to have her aboard here. So, okay, we're back at the Terminator and over on the west. Again, we're still looking at the craters Aliensis and Werner. And that's where, in that big black hole above Werner, maybe you could show us that. That's Aliensis. And the one above that, Jerry, is Werner. They're almost the same size. And if you went an equal distance along that line into that black void, the same distance as between the centers of the crater with your cursor, if you moved up to the upper left, following from Aliensis to, somewhere around there, maybe a little bit farther east, that is where the lunar X would show up. But it looks like it's not going to show up here until much later in the evening. So I don't know how late we're going to be able to go. But like I said at the outset, the sun rises on the moon very slowly, 30 times slower than it does on Earth. So just from my experience looking at the lunar X, I thought we were going to be able to see it tonight, but I don't think it's going to show up before the moon sets, or we won't be able to follow it maybe. But for people on the west coast or farther west, where it's earlier in the evening, they'll have a better chance of seeing the lunar X. But that's where it appears. I'm going to say a few words about the lunar X. It's something that appears for a few hours every time the sun comes around. And you'd think that you'd be able to see it every month, but you can't, because the lunar month is like 29 and a half days. So if you see it one month, then 29 and a half days later, it'll take place in it, and the moon won't be up. It'll be like daytime where you are, and it'll be on the other side of the world. If you could go in a plane, you could go and see it there. But another month later, you might be lucky. It might come back and you might be able to see it. So you typically see it 2 months apart, 2 lunations apart, if you're lucky. So it kind of comes and goes, and it's tricky to catch. You got to get the timing just right. And not many people talked about it. Obviously, it's been going on for a long time. It's not a new thing, but nobody really paid much attention. But I noticed it one night at a Nova East Star Party back in 2004, August. And it was an extra day. Everybody stayed over because it had been rained out, and some of us stayed an extra night. We were there a Sunday night. I think it was August 24th, 2004. And it was a really nice night, and we were waiting for it to get dark, and the first quarter moon was in the sky. And I trained my telescope, my small telescope, on the moon in this area. And I just noticed that there was this bright X. There was this like white X in the black. And it was just in this spot here in the north of the crater Werner. And I said, what the heck's that? And I've got everybody roused. Tony Jones took a picture of it. And after that, I got kind of interested in it because I'd never heard anyone talk about it. So I started asking around. And it turned out that a couple of people might have seen it before, but not many. And there weren't any real documents or documentation of it. I looked in all the books and everything. I found other pictures of it. Nobody ever really remarked on it. But after that, we sent a thing to Sky News, and it was picked up, and ever since then, people have been really interested in it. So, so that's my my connection with Lunar X. I didn't discover it because it was there all along. You know, I can't say that I was the first person to see it with any kind of certainty. But I will say that I am credited with popularizing it, and I'll accept that, because I did ask around, and it started showing up on the various forums and stuff, and after a while, people were looking for it, and asking for predictions of when it was going to appear and so on. And I did write an article in the Journal of the RASC, and I wrote down everything I knew about it, all the different apparitions I had seen, including one where I collaborated with RASC members all across the country, and we had a succession of people observing it from the east to the west, and I got them to send in reports, because it's really hard to see the whole evolution of the thing. But with that collective group, we made a collective observation, which I thought was kind of neat that we did that. We did that over the internet, and we wrote this article. And you can go and read about it. And nowadays, people, they look for it when they can. Sometimes people have star parties and it shows up. And I wish we could show you tonight, but the timing's off. How do things look out your way, Blair? Is that anything any better out your way?
So far, 1 second till I just look out the window and make sure I'm not lying. There is high cloud, which is blurring the view, but I've still got the moon up here. I also have a picture of the Lunar X if you want me to pull it up.
Yeah, why don't you share that, since I've been going on about it? People might want to know what it looks like. Can we?
Bear with me 1 second here. I'm just going to zoom my screen in a little bit so people can actually see it.
Jerry may, yeah.
And I will attempt to share my screen here. Easier said than done. Here we go. Share. Okay, you should be able to see it there now, and it's even got a line pointing to it.
Is that your picture, Blair?
Yes, it is.
And when was that taken?
Oh, a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what I saw in my small telescope. I mean, that view, I could see the entire moon, and it was that phase. And I looked, I said, what the hell? I saw that. And it looks more like an X if you don't zoom in on it. This is actually a good magnification, because it looks like an X, but then if you zoom in on it with higher magnification, you can see it's all broken up in different bits. So what's going on there is there's a crater, a fairly big crater, which I think might be Playfair or one of those. What's the other one?
Playfair.
There's another one that's involved. Anyway, there's a bunch of lunar craters that join at that point. And so what happens is the walls of the craters are very high, and they're just catching the sun. They're very high up, and they're catching the sun as it's rising at the location of the crater. The floors of all the craters are in shadow, and the mountain tops, the edges of the craters are catching the sun. I don't know if anyone has ever been to a mountainous area where at sunrise, when the sun catches the peaks of the mountains, but it's still dark where you are, still in shadow. And now on Earth, it's not so bad because you've got an atmosphere, and so you can still see things. But on the moon, there's no atmosphere, so you either have light or you have dark. There's no in between.
Are you referring to Blanchinus and Lacaille or Lacaille?
Yeah, I can't remember. Purbach. Yeah, Blanchinus is the one you can almost see there next to Werner, but on the other side, which is forming the other two arms of the crater, is Purbach. But Lacaille, I think, gets in there too. So there's three craters that kind of join in one spot. But the way to find it, right, is you go from Aliacensis to Werner, and then you keep going the same distance, and that's where the lunar X will appear. So that's what the lunar X is all about. And you can see some other features there that we've visited. Okay, let's go back to Jerry and we'll finish our journey down the Terminator. How long were you think of doing this for, Judy?
We had it scheduled for 3 hours, but it can, you know, up to you.
Well, you know, if you know, Blair has a different view of the moon through his system. If he, you know, we'll probably carry on with this for a bit, but maybe if Blair wanted to take over, we could look at it all at a different scale. So if we go down further south there, Jerry, there's quite a lot of craters down here. Now this one, here we have Stoffler and Mariolicus. I think things have changed there since we first started looking at it. Don't you agree, Judy?
A little, yes.
I see more of the crater floor than an hour ago.
Yep.
It was pretty much in shadow. So this is the cool thing about lunar observing, is that if you don't like the view, just wait a little bit and it'll change on you. And it's never the same twice, really. So every time you look at the moon, it looks a little different, and you see another some other facet. And if you just move your cursor a bit away from the crater there, I'm waiting for the light to improve, but you can see that the shadow, you can see the shadow of the crater walls are very jagged across the floor of the crater. So that kind of shows you the profile of the crater walls there, that jagged shadow. Let's go down and have a look at the limb, Jerry. We should be pretty close to the limb of the moon. Oh,
Yeah.
Blair, Troy had a question about your photograph, if it was a single frame or stacked. Did Blair go, is Blair online?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just popping between applications so I can turn my mic back on. That was a single photo. That was not a stacked photo at all.
Was that through your refractor or?
No, that was taken through my reflector a couple of years ago.
Okay. Yeah, when you don't have clouds in the sky and the seeing is good, it's not hard to get a nice sharp picture of the moon. So there's another question here from Elias. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Why is the moon so incredibly bright? Are some of the rocks and dust polished clean like a mirror? Actually, they say that the surface of the moon is about as dark as like an asphalt driveway, which sounds incredible. Well, you think it'd be something more silvery, but the reason it looks so bright is just because it's, you know, it's catching the sun's light and it's against a very dark sky. So our eyes just, you know, adapt to that. And if it were polished clean like a mirror, I think it would be a lot brighter than that. You do get an effect at full moon where the sunlight is being reflected right back, where it seems to get a little brighter around full moon. So Ilias, am I saying that right? Is it Ilias or Elias?
Ilias, you are correct, Dave.
Is I see the name is Hurley. Is he related to Peter?
None whatsoever, just the sun.
Okay. How old are you, Elias?
24?
Oh, okay.
I'm 25, actually.
Okay.
Sorry, Elias.
No worries.
Thanks. So are you Are you watching this with your dad, or are you somewhere else?
I'm actually in Montreal right now.
Oh, cool. Well, welcome from Montreal.
Thanks.
So there's the edge of the moon, the southern limb. I guess there's a whole ton of craters there. I'm not going to try to name them all off. Maybe Jerry, maybe what we can do is kind of let's tour along the limb of the moon and see what we can see. Go around, go back up to the north, a roundabout way along the limb. So as you see, as we get farther away from the terminator of the moon, what you're seeing there is you're getting into territory where the sun is higher in the sky. The sun is like get quite high in the sky, and the shadows that are being cast are not quite as big.
I'm just going to reduce my exposure here a bit.
Oh, okay, you're changing the exposure.
And
So here's a place of the moon which is even brighter than at the terminator, but it's because the sun is illuminating it at quite a high angle. So the backscattered light is that much stronger. Okay, we should get to a place. Let's stop there while I get my bearings. Where the heck are we?
Is that Mary Australis there, Dave? In the
I think it is. Yeah, down in the lower left corner, right corner, sorry, is a mare. But it's all squashed, and that's because it's the very. If you think about it, at this point, the moon surface is almost, almost like along the line of sight. It's like you're looking at the edge of a ball, and everything gets squashed. But that is Mare Australis, and
the pair of if you go to your left, Jerry, with your pointer to the two craters, those two, the upper one is Steinheil, Heil at the end, and the lower one is Watt, Watt.
Yeah. So what I was looking for, there's a linear feature, which is almost up and down, back towards the east, and a bit up. Where's your cursor, man? Your cursor disappeared. There he is. Whoop. Go back.
that way?
Well, too far. There. There's a linear feet. Whoop. Yeah, there. Stop.
It is.
Okay, so there, yeah, the seeing is a bit wonky at the moment. Too bad, I guess. So there's a crater there named Rita, and below the crater there's a valley called the Vallis Rita. And in fact, what it is a chain of craters, one on top of the other. So it's interesting to know how that got created. It was like a single impact of a thing that hit multiple times, but there was, or maybe there was an object that was almost like a shotgun type thing, where there were a number of different asteroids or something that came in together and created that feature. But if you could zoom in on that with a telescope, you see that it's really a chain of craters, and it makes a valley. And that is certainly one of the objects in Explore the Moon.
I can zoom in, I can't zoom out. So
Yeah, that's
not very useful.
Is that helping?
Whoop, a second, hopefully that'll come back. Maybe not.
I can zoom out compared to what Jerry had, but the clouds are blurring the image a bit, but I can flip it up if you'd like.
Yeah, why don't we have a look? I'd be interested to see what you have.
Okay, I'm mirror reversed from Jerry's view, by the way.
You can't
to make it confusing.
You can't fix that electronically?
Nope.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I have to pull it up. Let's see if this works. Now I have to turn down the intensity a bit.
Yes.
Bear with me.
So what Blair was saying there, because of the optics in his telescope, well, actually, his view is more or less the same. It's a little more zoomed out, but it's left-right mirror image from what we were just looking at, just to confuse you.
Another question from Ilias there, Dave.
Yeah.
Is there or was there ever any tectonic activity on the moon, or is it solid all the way through?
I'm not 100% sure. I think they do have seismographs, and there may be small tremors that can be measured. I don't really know the full answer to that, but I think the 25 cent answer is it's solid all the way through, and there's not a lot of, there's no continental plates or anything like that going on, or volcanic activity. So there might be microseisms related to impacts, but it's a long time since the moon had a fluid interior. It's cooled off and it's solid. So you can sort of see the clouds coming and going there.
Oh yeah. That is the way it has been here all night long.
Yeah. So what you can see there is a nice picture of some clouds. Good timing, Blair.
I thought you'd appreciate that. It will come back, maybe. Look out the window here.
An eclipse of the moon.
Yeah.
Unadvertised special. Oh, here we go. By the way, people who are getting started in astronomy, this is our life. This is what you have to put up with. You get everything all set and set up, and then the clouds move in, and So
yeah, I just turned up the exposure so you can see it again.
If you're interested in astronomy, I would advise you, if you're starting out, is that you should take out a second interest in cloudology, because either way you'll have something to look at.
No, then what'll happen is it'll rain.
And Wayne Mansfield says it's clouded out in Milton. So
okay, can
thanks
you
for joining us, Wayne?
Blair, can you move the frame up north so we can see a little bit more of the disk of the moon, and you just kind of arch it up there a little, since you've got such a nice wide field. Yeah, that's great. Stop there. Stop. Okay.
Unfortunately, the cloud is not going to cooperate, so that is about the best view I can get you at the moment. There's a big cloud bank right over the moon.
Wow.
See if I can adjust it a little bit.
Yeah, that's good. That's good there. So what you're seeing there, you're seeing all in one shot there, because Blair's got a wider field. You can see a lot of the principal mare of the moon. The one that's just above that box in his picture is Mare Nectaris, Sea of Nectar, and the one above that, the big one above that, that's Mare Tranquillitatis, the Sea of Tranquility, and on the edge of that sea is where Apollo 11 joined. Over to the left is Mare Facunditatis.
Lower left or upper left, Dave?
Middle left. That one there, Facunditatis.
Okay, am I circling the right one with my cursor?
Yeah, that's the right one. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the one up and to the right again. Oh, that one there is good. Yeah, that's Mare Crisium, the Sea of Crises. And that's the first one you see in the lunation pattern when the moon becomes a crescent. The first full Mare you see is the Mare Crisium. And the other one that we haven't visited yet is Mare Serenitatis, which is the biggest one there. Whoop, yeah. So you're seeing quite a few there.
And there's just a hint of Fregoris there above Chrysium and
yeah, I guess yeah.
There you go.
You go right to the north. There should be the eastern part of Fregoris.
Right to the north?
Yeah, you got to go right up to the north limb to see.
Yeah, just as the cloud moves in.
Yep.
1 second, I'll increase the exposure a
Ooh,
bit.
monkey.
Can't get some of that.
We were going out. Maybe you're ready to
Your
go out
skin
now.
tells your story. Care for it with Nivea Q10 Moisture Replenishment. Designed for extra thirsty skin, it combines argan oil with a Q10
Somebody's watching
coenzyme.
television.
Well,
You can see the cloud is now moving over the moon from where I am here, but
yeah. So we're kind of back to where we started with Jerry, which is that pair of craters near the north, Aristoteles and Eudoxus.
these two,
Yeah.
this one and this one.
And there's another Mare up on the upper left of the limb. There's another foreshortened Mare there. Well, I guess the clouds must have lifted off there, right?
Yeah, I'll just change the exposure again. Bear with me.
Yeah. Oh, that's a nice view. Yeah. There's Mare Humboldtianum. Another Mare that's you can see just at the edge of the moon there.
Right here?
Yeah, that little patch there. So
there it is.
How does your view look now, Jerry? Because Blair's is looking pretty good right now at this moment. Has yours cleared up any? Or well, having said that, here comes the cloud again.
Yeah, I would not say my view has cleared up. I'm looking at the moon out the window here, and it is still covered in cloud, as you can see.
Okay, yeah, it seems to come and go.
Yeah, even when you saw the brightest view there, it's still covered in cloud, which is why it's not very sharp.
Yeah, it's fairly clear here still.
I can stop sharing, Jerry, and let you take over there.
All right.
While you do that, I'm just going to go grab a glass of water.
No problem. Now, I saw someone come up with a question on the chat list there a minute ago, and now it's gone.
so welcome Kim. She's in southwestern Ontario. She's cloudy in Yarker, rain expected. So
Cloudy here, hurricane on the way.
yeah, there you go. It takes what we can get.
Jerry?
Yeah.
Just while we're waiting on Dave to come back, if you wouldn't mind, I'll share my screen and people can see why we're fighting cloud here.
Okay, let me stop that. And,
Well, I did come back, and here in Dartmouth, I looked out and I saw the moon unencumbered by clouds and the three bright planets. There's a bit of cloud around, but it seems to be clearing here.
Now, you can now see from the picture on my screen here why we are in cloud. We're right here.
Yeah.
And this hurricane that is supposed to turn to the east, hopefully, has not yet. It is headed straight at us.
Epsilon.
Yep.
Epsilon.
Anyway, that is why the screen is a, here, I'll start it moving. You can see what's been happening here for the last while. That cloud just keeps moving in, right?
Moving in from the south. Eh?
Yeah, when this little patch right here gets overhead, we'll have some clear skies for a little bit until it closes over.
Well, well, I'm just saying, I looked out just a minute ago and it was clear in Dartmouth. So we can hang on for a little bit and see what happens. But if things don't clear up, I don't know how much farther we can go with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it out there if anybody has any more questions about the moon or our programs. Or
I have a question about Blair's particular setup. I know he has an 840 millimeter scope. What have you got in terms of the Barlows on top of that?
At the moment, it's a 2.5 times Celestion Barlow, and the camera is just plugged right in it. In actual fact, the 2.5 times Barlow gives me about, because of the projection distance to the camera sensor, gives me more like 3 times.
And just so we don't feel too badly, apparently it's snowing in Winnipeg.
Winterpeg.
Yes.
that's not surprising.
Hey, it is October after all.
I used to live there, you know. That's where my career in astronomy started, when I was 8 years old.
Would you like to go back to the moon for now?
Might as well.
Yeah, let's go. You want to go? You want to go back, Jerry, or?
Sure.
Or did Blair have something else he wanted to show us? Or?
No, I am looking at cloud.
Wow.
If I look at my guide scope, which I also have on the moon, it's got a very wide field, but you can definitely see the cloud whiz by.
Yeah. Well,
we're not that far apart, so it's a very precise line.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that cloud bank has a very sharp wall, and I'm just under it, and you're not.
Well, I think we're a little bit under it here right now.
Where are we there? Okay, I know where we are.
Yeah, we're back up top. You're muted, G.
You're back at Plinius, and
yes,
it's Haemus. At the south end of Mare Serenitatis.
Well, I'm a bit of a loss at what to do next. We kind of went all around. If there's anything in particular people want to look at, they could ask. Or does anybody else have any other ideas? We've been doing it for almost an hour and a half.
Ilias says, more of a question about the culture around the moon. Have people ever thought there were monsters on the moon, or depicted the moon with monsters on it, like old maps depict oceans with giant octopi?
I don't think there's anything quite like that. Well, there's kind of a short and a long answer. I mean, there's been a lot of science fiction around the moon. You know, I think Jules Verne, was the first person who wrote a story about traveling to the moon. That was a pretty famous thing. In terms of culture, indigenous cultures and other traditional cultures around the world have lots of myths and legends around the moon. Clearly, the cycle of the moon is a very important one to early watchers of the sky. You know, the most obvious cycle is the day-night cycle, which you would get up with the sun and go to bed with the sun. And then the seasonal cycle is driven by the Earth going around the sun. That's if you have seasons, that is. In parts of the world, you don't have seasons so much, tropical areas, but in temperate parts of the world, that's is a really strong season. And the moon, the cycle of the moon is kind of a convenient intermediate time cycle that kind of breaks up the year into roughly 12 periods. But it's not exact. And so there's lots to say about that. But most traditional cultures use the moon in one form or another to subdivide the year and to schedule things. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were asking about. There's also legends about things like people see things like the man in the moon and that kind of thing, the patterns. I don't know if anyone ever attributed actual sort of creatures or spirits, as it were. But there's a ton of moon lore. I mean, every culture has moon lore of one kind or another. And the indigenous teachings, the sun and the moon are like the grandmother and the grandfather kind of thing. Grandmother moon and grandfather sun, that kind of thing. So they see those objects as having spirits, like everything has spirits. But,
Eric, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know of anything particular like monsters or anything like that. I can't think of anything. I've never really came across anything like that. Eric wants to talk about moon illusions. So let's let Eric talk. Eric has something to say.
Thank you, David. Yeah. I think that there is a lot of ink that could be spilled about various different illusions that some people perceive on the moon. I think the most well-known moon illusion is called the full moon illusion. And this is something that people notice when the moon is full more than at any other time of the month. And when the moon is close to the horizon, if you look at the moon, you may think of it as a certain diameter, a certain size. But then when it gets high up and above the local horizon and it's away from the ground, it seems much smaller. And I recently saw an interesting clip of Patrick Moore on a beach in England with some people. And he had them look at the moon, and then he had them look away from the moon, and then he had them each pick up a pebble from the beach that when held at arm's length, that they think would be about the same size as the moon. And when they held it up to cover the moon, each pebble was considerably larger than the moon would be. So these were all people who had felt this illusion. Let me see what other kinds of illusions there are. I've heard of various ways of trying to deal with that full moon illusion. One idea was to turn upside down and look at the full moon through your legs, and apparently that makes it the illusion go away. The lunar transient phenomena that I think you've already discussed, that's another interesting moon illusion.
Which
I've seen.
What the transient, like, what do you mean?
Well, transient lunar phenomena are phenomena of one type or another of observing things, where someone might think that they see a bright spot on a crater, perhaps just as the sun is rising over that crater.
Yeah.
It could be a glint of sunlight off of something. And before we were sure that the moon wasn't geologically active, there was always the possibility of active volcanoes on the surface of the moon, and we could see them erupting from Earth. Not much of a problem anymore, though.
No.
Mm-hmm. I've seen a couple of references recently to the illusion that the moon radiates cold. And this isn't something that you see exactly, but if you go out on an autumn morning, let's say, after the moon has been up, and the temperature is above zero, but you see a thin film of ice on top of, say, the bird feeder in your backyard, um, and yet nothing around you is frozen. Does that mean that the moonlight somehow chilled your environment? And the fantastic confirmation of this illusion was actually someone who had a thermal imaging camera and took it out at night and compared the temperature of the lawn in their backyard to the lawn underneath a tree in the backyard. And they found that the ground underneath the tree was considerably warmer than the ground that was exposed to the moonlight. But there's a fallacy here. The real problem is that the ground that was shielded from the open sky by the tree was retaining its heat. And the ground that was under the open sky exposed to the moonlight was not. So that's the cause of that particular illusion. I don't think anybody's really going to have difficulty understanding this one.
I actually never heard of that.
Well, I hope that everybody understands this one. I'll leave it at that.
Well, I understand what you said, but I guess the debunking of it was so good that, you know, it just never, I just never heard about that issue.
There's various other illusions, but I would rather not discuss them all right now.
No. And you and I don't agree 100% on the meaning of the word illusion. So yeah, we won't discuss them because, but of course, I guess we should mention one more thing. I mean, I think having talked about the moon illusion, I mean, there's also a kind of, I mean, somebody jokingly referred to me as a lunatic.
Yes, full moon fever is another thing.
It might be somewhat true. But yeah, the idea that the full moon brings out the craziness in people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty well embedded in folklore. Although I think most controlled scientific studies have debunked that, but it's pretty hard to eradicate that from the folklore.
The folklore especially. I've located a book called Kentucky Superstitions that was published in around 1920. And I think this was a gold mine for anybody who was looking for any particular sort of folk myths and things like that. But there were various meanings that were attached to the idea of the wet moon or the dry moon. And when the moon is aligned as a crescent with its horns, say towards, coming down a little bit towards the earth on a steep angle like this, it holds the water inside of it. And that's thought to be, I think that means that it's the dry moon, but it could possibly mean that it's the wet moon because it's holding the water inside of it and not spilling it.
Right.
But then at different other seasons, when the moon is at much more of an angle that's close to horizontal in the evening with respect to the horizon, that's the season when the water is spilling out of the moon and causing the rainy season.
Right. So that would be very latitude dependent.
Yes.
So
there's a newspaper column from Helen Sawyer Hogg about that, but I think she's a little bit unclear as to what it means in a global sense, probably because it has different meanings to different cultures.
Well, thanks for that, Eric.
Thank you.
I'm not sure it's what Ilias was looking for, but that's what he got. So.
Yeah, and there's a question from Troy. He says, since views change depending on where the moon is in its cycle, and this year Halloween falls on a full moon, what are your favorite things to look at on a full moon?
If he's asking me, I don't find the full moon is actually a good time to observe the moon. However, a lot of people think that, you know, that's the case. And, you know, I've had people say, oh, let's do this event on the full moon because, you know, we'll be able to see all the things. But the truth of the matter is that to when the moon is full, the light, it's like it's directly overhead, and it's shining right back. There are very few shadows cast. The whole face of the moon takes on a completely different appearance than at other phases. So it's really hard sometimes to pick out sort of the kind of craters and things you want to look at. However, having said that, there are certain things that show up at full moon very well. So, for instance, you can pick out the mare very easily in a full moon picture or a view. So you can, if you're observing the moon and you're supposed to observe all the mare, full moon, you can check them all off in one night. The other thing that shows up quite a bit is certain areas of the moon have highly reflective surfaces because of the material. And when the sun's overhead at full moon, that stuff shines back. So you get a very enhanced view of those. So the rays of the moon, you can see rays on the moon in these different areas that have different geology. I suppose I shouldn't use the word geology because it's the moon. Selenology, I guess, is the right word. Anyway, so it is a different view. It's not my favorite time to look at the moon. I actually think that right now is a good time because so many things are in relief and you can see so many. If the weather were clear, like on the day of the first quarter or the day before, the day after, you could knock off 25% of Explore the Moon in 3 nights. Because you're looking at the middle part of the moon and there's a lot of stuff there. The other thing that's interesting at full moon is that the moon is never quite lined up with the sun and the earth. If it were, it would be obviously an eclipse of the moon. But it's usually a bit high or a bit low or a bit to one side, And so if you go around the limb of the full moon, you will find a part of the limb which is not illuminated, and you can see you can see there's a bit of a Terminator there, and you can look at some craters and mountains, and there's some interesting stuff to look at sometimes along the edge of the limb of the moon.
David, I have a full moon picture here taken through my reflector that probably demonstrates some of what you just mentioned.
Yeah,
let's share my screen here.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I find intriguing to look at with full moon is the ejecta pattern from the various craters. And
yeah, well, I mentioned that in the rays. So that's a really great picture, Blair. It shows all of the things that I said. You can see all of the mare. You can see the rays certainly from the crater Tycho and other craters like Copernicus and Kepler, and so the rays really show up. But you can see these little dots everywhere, these little tiny little dots. So these are, I'm going to guess that those are young craters that are, when I say young, it could still be 1 billion years old, but younger than everything else. And so there you have some of this material that's been ejected out, and it's highly reflective. And at the top of the moon there in that picture, you can sort of see where you're not seeing the limb of the moon fully. There's a bit of a Terminator there, so you can see some relief along the edge. And if you zoom in with your telescope when it's like that, there's some pretty interesting stuff you can see there. And you can see also, the other thing you can see really nicely is that the moon isn't perfectly round, because if you go around the limb, you can see there's little mountains and little irregularities. So you're sort of seeing the roughness of the moon there. It's not like a perfectly smooth sphere with stuff painted on it. There's actually relief in the moon. There's actually topography there. That's a really great picture. You can also see variations in the darkness of the mare. Some places are darker than others. So has that been made black and white, Blair, or is that actually a color photograph?
That is a color photograph, but I have not pushed the color to make it visible. I do have some here if anyone is interested in actually seeing some of what is actually real color on the moon.
Yeah, you really have to push it. It's not color that you would see with your eye.
Absolutely not. The view with your eye is very close to this.
But I mean, but the colors aren't artificial. They're real and reproducible.
That is correct.
When you push the saturation, you can sort of see different reflectivities of the.
Give me 1 second, and I just have to find it. Bear with me. Somewhere here I have just that. Possibly this one. Nope, not that one. I'll have to find it. I have it here somewhere. I will let Jerry pop the moon up there, and I will find it and pull it up.
Ilias is full of interesting questions. He says that it's round, but how spherical is it? He's asking if it bulges out as well as like the Earth does. Well, the moon is spinning very slowly, so it wouldn't bulge out for that reason. But I actually don't have that answer to that question either. That's kind of, you can probably investigate that if you went to any kind of lunar cartography site, or they would probably talk about the geoid, or you know, like the best fit sort of oblate spheroid to the moon for charting purposes. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's a lot, other than the fact that it's got roughness, it's a lot rounder than the Earth because it's spinning a lot slower.
There's the limb, speaking of the limb.
Sorry?
There's the limb, speaking of the limb.
That's the southern limb?
Yeah.
Let's march up the Terminator and see if we can see anything going on at the Lunar X site.
Yeah, I was just there a little while ago. I didn't see much.
Yeah, I saw the Pam made a comment about nurses and full moons, and I know that health professionals feel there is that correlation, but I think when you subject all of those data to a proper scientific test, controlled test, those correlations go away. It's a case of perception, and I can't remember the terminology, but it's. But I've had that conversation with health professionals. It's a touchy subject. They'll swear up and down that there's a full moon. You know, there's more things going on in full moons and so on.
There was a study done pardon the phrase, many moons ago that actually disproved the fact that there were more psychiatric cases during the full moon. So.
Yeah. Well,
I have that color moonshot now, if you're interested.
Oh. Can you hold on just for a sec, Blair? I just wanted to.
No problem at all.
Jerry. I want to go back to Jerry just because I saw something there. Jerry?
Yeah, I think I'm here, am I?
Yeah, you're there.
We want to see the moon.
But the picture isn't, dear.
Share the moon.
Oh, okay. Why is that? Let's see. Just hold on. I guess I do have to share my screen.
There you go.
Okay. So you see where I said the Lunar X would appear?
This area?
A little bit north and west of Werner. You see that there's something there?
Right.
That's the beginning of it there. And quite frankly, if it's beginning at whatever time it is, 8:45, we're probably not going to be able to see that through. That people to the west, maybe Kim Hay, I don't know, did Kim say it was cloudy there or clear? Kim might be able to see the lunar X.
And she said it was raining.
Okay, so you're not going to be able to see the lunar X.
Interesting. Just watching it now, though, you can see it developing, I think, as we're watching.
Yeah, well, I only saw one blob, and now I can see two and suggests of another. But there is the sunlight just catching the tips of those crater walls that will eventually become the lunar X. So eventually, I guess the moon's going to set behind a tree or a house at your place, huh?
So does Blair want to show his image?
Yeah. Why don't we let Blair show his image and we'll pop back and have a look at this in a few minutes.
Bear with me just a second. I also have the moon in clear skies at the moment, surprisingly enough.
Wow.
So here is the moon. There is a color image, and there it is without the color
Share
saturation.
your screen.
Yeah, we're not seeing your screen.
Oh, yeah, okay. I guess I have to share it, don't I? 1 second. We want this one. There you go.
Okay. Whoa. Yeah, there's the color.
So it's blinking back and forth.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and the color is real. All that is, those are the same image, just one has the color saturation really turned up. The other one does not. And if anyone is curious, the blue shades are actually, if I remember correctly, titanium deposits.
So you can correlate the color with specific chemical composition?
Yes, you can. There's a NASA site that actually gives you the color image, which is what I checked mine against, and they give you some of the reasons for the colors. They list titanium as the light blue, so all this area up here. The darker blue around here, I forget what that is, and then the reddish brown was another material, and I just don't remember what they were.
So I wonder if that is material which was deposited by the impacting body or something from inside. Be interesting to know how the differences occur.
Completely unsure. It might be in that article if anyone wants to go take a look.
Huh.
And as fun as a flashing color picture is, we actually have a moon in the sky at the moment. I'm going to share a different screen here. Bear with me.
And Kim has it's clear according to all sky, but it's very windy there apparently.
Here we go. Here
So,
is,
and Troy asked, would those colors be visible to someone on the moon then?
no,
No.
those are extremely stretched colors. I think that was about 5 passes of a saturation increase. So you would never be able to see anything like that.
So is that a live picture of the moon there, Blair?
That is a live picture of the moon,
Right.
which I now have to close it down and restart it. Bear with me, something happened. But the nice part is I can actually do that from here if all goes well. That is also a live picture of the moon through the guide scope. I can't turn the exposure down anymore, unfortunately.
Looks like something that Galileo would have drawn.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully I don't have to go out and power cycle the camera. Just bear with me. You know, as soon as I get this started, it'll cloud over again. Okay, let's see if it'll let me connect. Nope, I have to go out and power cycle the camera. I'll be right back, folks. I'll stop sharing my screen and Jerry can share his. Back in a minute.
Are you cloud free, Jerry?
Yes.
That looks pretty good.
I think I'm good here, yeah. There's not much change in the X. Maybe you can see a little bit more in between.
Yeah, it won't change that much that quickly.
When we look outside through the window, it does not look clear, but it's not cloudy.
So what I remember from studying the X, from the very beginning to the very end, it's like 3 or 4 hours, and we're a couple of hours out from when it's you know, the maximum effect. So I think by then the moon's going to be pretty low in the sky here.
Yeah, I probably have about an hour's worth of
Yeah.
treeless viewing.
You know, we've kept our participants up. I'm always amazed at how people stick with us so long.
So the homeschooling has left. They said, thank you. That was wonderful, but it's late. Good night. So good night, Pam and her crew.
Good night.
Oh, there's a heart.
But you know, but like I say to people who ask me, like, especially the last few weeks, I've been staying up to look at Mars, sometimes wee hours in the morning. People say, well, when do you sleep? You know, like, how can you do that? People have told me, like, there's no way I'm interested in the sky, but there's no way I'd get up at 2 o'clock to look at something. And I said, well, when you're an astronomer, you observe when you must and you sleep when you can. Yeah, but some people just can't do it, eh? They need their sleep, and yeah, you can't excuse them. I mean, it's important to get sleep, and it's better if it's regular, which probably explains a lot.
That's why you become astrophotographers. Let the computer do the work.
What kind of photographer?
Astrophotographers. Let the computer do the work.
Well, only recently. I mean, in the good old days of astrophotography, you had to sit up with your gear. People make a lot of fun of me. Like, I share a picture of the moon with my telescope, and they're saying, oh, I'm going to the dark side. You know, I've been taking pictures of the sky since most of you guys were in short pants. Jerry accepted because he's older than me.
Well, I might have been in short pants.
But yeah, it's just, I mean, it was just a lot harder. But I take pictures of the sky with the robot telescope at St. Mary's, and I dial it up and go to bed. And in the morning, you know, I look at the pictures when I'm eating my Cheerios. It would be nice if there were a setup like that with a planetary or lunar camera, you know, so you could take pictures of Mars or whatever, you know, remotely, robotically, and but then you just, all you do is you wait for David Hoskin to show you his. And
are you aware of a way of pointing a telescope to specific craters on the moon? Or a go-to approach?
I mean, I don't know of that offhand. I would say it's conceivable, but I know in Sky Safari, which I can use to operate my telescope, Sky Safari identifies specific features on the moon, and you can tell Sky Safari to go to whatever feature it is you're looking at. So in principle, yes. The only other thing is that the accuracy of those things is somewhat limited. You know, like the accuracy isn't that great. You always have to fine tune it in the end, but in principle, you should be able to.
Fabian also has a picture of the moon with color. If we like, he can share that one with us.
Yeah, I've seen that on Facebook, I think, but I wouldn't mind seeing it again, since the Lunar X takes so gosh darn long.
So if you have it, Fabian, I'd love to see it.
Ilias is saying NASA has a Mars observatory that publishes their photos every day. Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one I took there a little bit ago.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, like you said, Dave, you did see this one on Facebook. I believe I shared it.
Yeah, it looks familiar, but yeah, yours isn't quite as saturated, but you can see the different. I think I like the appearance of yours better. It doesn't seem quite so forced.
Yeah, once you go too much, it gets really pixelated, and
yeah,
as you can see on the edge there, it's
now
a
Wayne
little green there too.
Wayne Mansfield was asking about the rays of Tycho, and he's saying that they seem off center. Tycho seems off center, and I see what he's saying about that now. Why don't the rays all go to the center of Tycho? Good question. I don't know the answer to that offhand. I mean, they're obviously generally related to Tycho, but yeah, they don't all lead back to the center of the crater. Maybe there were just different sources of the rays, not just one spot. You know, it looks like one of them is coming from the edge of the crater. It's a couple of like that. They're sort of parallel. You go over where Copernicus is, and there's a whole network of like a spider's web of something there. And there's a lot of really good questions tonight that each one of them could keep you busy. David Hoskin is offering to share the lunar V, which I think occurs at the same time as the X. It's just in a different part.
Dave, to go back to Tycho while he's putting up the photo or the picture, would the positioning of those rays be related to the locations of the craters surrounding Tycho?
Well, I think it might be something like that. I don't know. Maybe there's more to be learned there, but it's clear to me, it doesn't seem like exactly one event, maybe, or
because if you look at the rays, say going north from Tycho towards Mare Nubium, for instance, the craters on that side are not as deep or as massive as the ones that are south of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what craters they're speaking of, but
for instance, south of it is Maginus, Clavius, Longomontanus,
yeah,
that sort of thing. Whereas north is Roselbauer, Goricus, Hiditus, Delandra. So they're shallower.
I bet you that there's scientific papers written on those things, but you'd have to dig them out. So there's David Hoskins' picture of the lunar V, but you can actually see the lunar X as well, eh?
Yeah, I got them both.
Yeah.
The V and the X.
Yeah. Somebody, I don't know who, did somebody say there was a lunar Elvis?
There is. It's further north.
Anyway.
Yeah.
A lot of dyed-in-the-wool lunar observers scoff at this kind of stuff. You know, they think it's pretty childish, I guess, to focus on that. But I don't know. I just thought it was fun when I saw the X and
and of course, Troy also says, could it be an illusion because we're not looking directly at Tycho?
It could be, but you could answer that question from maybe the orbiter pictures. Those rays should show up on the orbiter pictures. I mean, they're not optical things. They're actual material on the lunar surface that's reflecting the light in a different way. So I mean, they're actually physical things. I just don't know the answer to that. So what are we waiting for? Blair had to do something in his scope, right?
He had to go repower it or something?
Yeah, I had to change the battery in the camera. It's up and running again, but of course now there's cloud over it.
Well,
Oh.
I don't know. We've been
No.
going for a couple hours. What do you think? Is it time to wrap this up, or are there more things that people want to talk about or look at? If Blair has got cloud, then Jerry can't be too far behind, eh?
The cloud has been staying pretty close to the coast, so I don't know whether Jerry has got some clear skies there. Mine are now clear again.
Okay.
Bear with me, I'm just sort of centering the moon back up here. There we go. I can share that view, I think. Soon as, oops, okay, there's why I can't. You're up in the corner on me. There we are. There. So now you should be able to see, if I get rid of my, there we are. So there's the moon.
Yep.
There is still cloud going in front of it. Sometimes the cloud disappears and I get a very nice, sharp, crisp view. Sometimes, like it's doing right now, the cloud rolls in.
There you go.
Was anybody else other than me observing Mars last night by any chance? No?
Yeah, I was looking at it, Dave. I couldn't see much of anything.
Too
So
cloudy in New Jersey, apparently.
The seeing started off bad and got better, but then just as it got better, this ridge of kind of like, I don't know, like herringbone type clouds came moving along, and I was getting this weird filtration effect, and I eventually gave up around midnight. But
Yeah, I took a picture around 11 and it was the worst one I've taken so far.
yeah, I drew what I saw. I'm not even calling them sketches anymore because they're more like impressions, like, you know, those impressionistic paintings where you can't quite make things out. And anyway, I drew the thing and I was sharing it with people, and people were seeing a face in it. I didn't even see this until they mentioned it, but somebody said it looked like a Ninja Turtle, and somebody else made a comment about it looking like a face, and I didn't even see that. I was so focused on getting the details right, I didn't sit back and I didn't see what I had drawn until somebody pointed it out to me. But I'm sharing it for the sake of completeness, but it's not my best drawing either. I made a list of all the different central longitudes that I had drawn Mars at, and I have enough that I could try to actually draw a map of Mars all the way around, although it wouldn't be a very good one. But I've seen it, like it's kind of, if you observe at the same time every night, it shifts just a little bit from one night to the next, kind of like those movies where, you know, you're watching the stagecoach go down and the wheels are going backwards, that kind of thing, kind of a stroboscopic effect. And it's kind of starting a second round of everything that I've seen up till now. So the one good thing is you don't have to wait up so late at night to see it. But I think that the seeing actually usually gets better as the night proceeds. That's been my experience anyway. It never really starts out very good. But it's the most complete picture of view of Mars I've ever seen, and it may end up being the only good one. Anyway, it's been fun.
My apologies for leaving, but I think my mount crossed the meridian and hit its limit, so kick it a bit.
I'm getting close to that point. It'll want me to flip here in a few minutes.
Okay, David Ramsey found a reference about crater rays being not centered. I knew there must be something out there somewheres. There's Ilias asking the tough questions again. What do you think is the most underrated and overrated features of the moon? Huh. I don't know if I can answer that. I don't think I'm objective enough. Everything is amazing about the moon, right?
No, the most overrated thing is calling it a supermoon.
Oh, that's true. It's not really a feature, but you know, I agree with you there. I don't go much for that. Won't get me started. Underrated. I think for the people who are not lunar observers, who hate the moon, you know, like just I can't do astronomy because the moon's in the sky. Those people, I think they have this idea that the moon, you know, because it physically doesn't change, that it ceases to be of interest. But I guess what I think is that every time you look at the moon, the lighting is just a little bit different, and the angle isn't always exactly the same, even if you pick it at the same longitude, because there are other subtle features of looking at the moon. So I think so that I guess the underrated thing about the moon is that it's always the same and it never changes. I mean, it is underlying, yes, but with its revolution around the Earth and the sun, the view is always changing. So there's always something interesting to look at, I find.
From the look of the sky out my window, I think that little gap of clear sky that was there is now gone. I am beginning to get clouded out again. No, and just as I say that, it brightens up.
So Blair, whenever you feel like saying something like that, say the opposite of what you're going to say. So I guess I feel like we're winding down a bit. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to make a little plug here. And I think that people should observe the moon. It gives you something to do when, you know, in between, you know, dark sky periods. You can observe the moon from your home in the city. You don't have to have, you know, you don't have to go anywhere special. You can observe from your backyard, your front yard, whatever. You don't really need a really sophisticated setup to observe the moon. You can explore the moon telescope. I think you can do a fairly small aperture telescope, like a 60 millimeter, 80 millimeter. There is a version for binoculars, which is a separate program. The Isabel Williamson program is a lot more complicated, and you know, you'd need like an 8-inch reflector or something like that to see all the things that you're supposed to see. But the Explore the Moon program is quite nice. I say that it's funny because I co-invented it, but I haven't actually gone through and observed it. I mean, I've observed all the things that are in it, but I just haven't gone through the program itself and gone through it myself. Maybe I should. But I don't know. Judy, you've done it.
Isabel?
No, you've done Explore the Moon, haven't you? Or you are doing?
Yeah, I finished the binocular and I've got 2 left to do for all of it for the telescope.
So from your perspective, as you're not exactly a beginner anymore, but you're fairly new to astronomy and telescope viewing. What are your impressions of the program and its level of difficulty, and what's your impressions of it?
I don't think it's difficult. I mean, as Melody always says, it takes a bit of patience because for me, my challenge was looking at things mirror reversed and then trying to figure out what things were because they were mirror reversed.
Were you using your reflector to see the moon, or are you using the grain?
For the telescope, it was the Meade, but with
the grain, yeah.
with the also with the star diagonal, it seemed to change the perspective as well, depending upon which side you flip the star diagonal.
Yeah, I mean, it'll rotate. The view will rotate if you
Yeah.
rotate.
But as far as challenging otherwise, no, but it was really cool to actually explore where things are located relative to one another. You hear the names, but you get to learn where the mare are, what the major craters are around them, and outside them as well. Like,
were there any objects or features that were particularly hard to find, or were they all pretty much the same level of difficulty?
I think they were all the same level of difficulty. I mean, I don't recall anything having to wait till the limb was exposed due to libration. I don't.
No, there's no libration.
That's only in the Isabel Williamson where you have to wait for those librations to explore some of them.
And those are in fact optional.
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, Explore the Moon is based on the list that has been in the handbook for quite some time. So I don't know. I guess it must have been Roy Bishop who actually put that together and drew the maps and everything. So they were, you know, when we had the idea of putting together a beginner's lunar, you know, we were saying, well, what should we include? I said, well, why should we reinvent the wheel? You know, we have a list in the handbook, we have maps, you know, why don't we just use that? And so I just took that as the starting point. And the only change that I made, and I had to get Roy to agree, was there's 4 craters called the Gang of 4, which I like on the moon. And one of those craters wasn't in the list in the handbook. Vendelinus, I think, was the name of it. And the fact that it started with the letter V is important, because I looked at it, I said, and I went to Roy and I said, could we add a crater to the handbook list? And he said, well, yeah, but like the numbering and everything's going to get all messed up. I said, well, it's actually starts with a V, and there's only one other crater that would be affected. And it wasn't that big of a change, and he agreed to do it. So we did this subtle change in the handbook between one year and the next, where we added a crater. All of the labeling more or less stayed the same. And then we got Michael Gatto to redraw the maps and everything. And then we were good to go. And that's when we did the Explore the Moon, introduced the Explore the Moon observing certificate. And Melody was the first person to fully complete it. And so she did it, and that's when I knew that, you know, we had something that other people would enjoy, because she was beginning at the time as well. So I really encourage people to try it, even if they're interested in other things. Try to Explore the Moon. When the moon's out, observe the moon. And all the materials you need are online at the RASC website. No charge. Download them, print them. And as far as the left-right mirror reverse, there's both kinds of charts in the material that we have online. So you just have to figure out what kind of chart you should use that matches what telescope you're going to use.
And while you're discovering those items that you have listed in the program itself, you also discover other things, other craters, and get to name those too.
Yeah.
And if you can, don't forget to try and sketch what you see as well, because seeing and doing in terms of drawing things also helps retain memory as to what that object looks like next time you see. You say, oh, that's such and such, because I drew that. So
Jerry's got us back at the so we got half of an X, right?
Yeah, we have a.
So that kind of came out. Well, how long has it been? About half an hour, or a little bit longer than that?
Well, 15 minutes, and we've been looking at it, maybe.
So what that X is going to turn into a T. Like you can almost see how it's starting now. That other arm is coming out.
Yeah.
and then it'll turn into a full X. It's not an X. That L, that backwards L, is going to turn into a T and then into an X. So
I'm getting closer to the trees, but
yeah. Well, we saw part of it anyway. People have a view. People have some sense of how long it takes to emerge. It's the kind of thing where you can set up your telescope and go look at it every, I would say, 15 minutes or so, and you would see some change. But to actually see it evolve through its full cycle requires some tricky timing. And so the people out west are going to be able to have a better view of that if it's clear where they are. So what do you say? People are, we still have 17 people are sticking with us. I want to hear from Lisa Ann. Lisa Ann, did you enjoy the program?
I did. I sure did.
Great. You were thinking that that might be your next observing challenge.
It definitely is. I mean, I think a few months ago I started to feel like that's the program that I want to pursue next. Yeah. I'm definitely a selenophile, self-described selenophile.
Great. What telescope are you going to use for that?
Well, I have as you know, I have a birding scope that I use today, that I use for Explore the Universe. And then I have a very basic, is it G-Sky, or is that how you say it?
No. Go Sky? Gosky?
Yeah. And GSKYER. I bought that off Amazon a few years ago. I'm not sure if it's the right scope. I'm starting to get scope envy the more I watch these programs.
Well, Swarovski, what are the specs of Swarovski? That must be a pretty decent instrument.
Yeah, the Swarovski, it's HD glass. The zoom is 25 to 60.
Yeah, and what's the aperture on it?
I'm not sure.
About 70?
Yeah. That sounds about right.
I think
so.
I think you could probably do it with that. I don't know.
I mean, those pictures that I post on Instagram are taken through the birding scope.
Yeah.
Those are digiscope through the birding scope.
Yeah. Yeah, you could start out with that and see how you get along, and then you might find you need a different kind of scope to get some of the features. I mean, it's a good name. It's a good quality brand. I would expect the optics are quite good. When I was a kid, I was using 60 power was the maximum I was using to observe the moon, and I was sketching craters. But I bet you could do it with that.
I mean, it's done the job so far, even with some of the deep sky objects. I just wish the skies were darker around here in New Jersey.
Well, the moon shouldn't give you any trouble.
Nope.
Are you in an apartment or a home or?
I'm in a condo complex, so we're in a townhome.
And which way can you see easily from your patio or your balcony or whatever?
We actually face all four directions. We're in the corner. Wow. So if I come out, because our common area has a hill, so if I go up on the hill, I could see west. So which is the only one that I can't see from our windows.
When I did the Isabel Williamson from my backyard, and I don't have a very good sky in the backyard, but if I put my telescope in a certain place in my backyard, I get a view of the meridian. And so I was always able to catch the moon when it was culminating. When it was in its early phases, I couldn't see it very well, but I did the trick of observing those ones after full moon and the waning phases. And so I was able to do everything from my backyard.
I've shared that we have a local cemetery that's about a mile from home, and that's become my my dark sky place.
Okay.
You have to improvise, right?
Okay, well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Hope to hear from you more about that.
You will. Thank you very much for your help. This was great. I enjoyed this.
Great. Does anyone else have anything they want to ask or comment about? Okay. Well, Judy, why don't you say goodbye to everybody?
I could do that, definitely.
You're the host. You're the host.
Well, thank you, Dave, Jerry, and Blair, for your expertise and your patience in looking at that moon and trying to get the lunar X so close. You can actually almost see the X forming every so often when it clears up a little bit. You can actually see both arms starting to form now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for asking such incredible questions this evening and challenging Dave and his knowledge and the rest of us as well. Just as a heads up, a reminder to our members only, there's a special meeting tomorrow afternoon that we hope you can participate in. Otherwise, folks, our regular meeting is November 7th, November the 7th, Saturday, November 7th from 1 to 4 o'clock Atlantic, which is noon to 3 Eastern. Those are advertised on our site, so please join us. And if something comes up again, we will certainly offer another virtual observing session.
Just before we go, Karen had a question that we should answer before we sign off. She's asking, where do you take the journal for certificates? So I'm going to interpret what that question is. If you're a member of the Halifax Center, and I'm not sure, Karen, if you are or not, you can definitely bring it to me or show it to me somehow. If you have some observing program you finished and want authenticated. And also, we have a deal with Melody Hamilton, who, because she's a member of the Minus Astronomy group, and we know there are people who are go there more than, well, we're not having physical meetings anymore, but Melody Hamilton can also sign off on any observing certificates for Explore the Universe for anyone, and all of the other certificates for RSC members. Okay, I hope that answers your question, Karen. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you one and all. And I'm sure we will see you folks either at another meeting of our center or at another virtual observing session. So good night all, and keep looking up.
Thank you.